City Council and Local Contract Review Board meeting to order. City Recorder Krager, please call roll.
Councillor Slack.
Here.
Councillor Shaw.
Here.
Council President Wolf.
Here.
Councillor Gadusi.
Present.
Councillor Hu.
Here.
Mayor Lube.
Here.
Councillor Robbins.
Here. And the youth counselor is now living her best summer life, in case you're wondering where she is. If you will all please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, everyone. We will start off with proclamations and recognition, and we have Management Analyst Richardson here with us as we proclaim June 19th as Juneteenth. Absolutely, welcome.
Hi again, all. I told you I'd see you here this week. Just for the record, again, my name is Alex Richardson. I'm a management analyst, and this is Juma Wali. You want to introduce yourself? You might remember that Juma was here actually in February because we worked with him for the Black History Month event too, and so we're co-planning Juneteenth together along with Cindy Murphy, our event consultant, and so I prepared some remarks, but Juma's just here to accept as well, and I just wanted him to have a presence because he's been a huge part in planning our Juneteenth event, and we're doing the Juneteenth proclamation, so thank you for being here. So I kind of wrote out some remarks. I was really just inspired when a couple of our directors a couple months ago accepted the proclamation for the Asian American and Pacific Islander Native American, or Native Hawaiian, Heritage Month. So I just thought about it, and I think you all up here probably know the basic history of Juneteenth. Maybe not everybody in the audience does, so I wanted to just start with a little bit of that. So I'm going to quote the National Museum of African American History and Culture here. So Juneteenth marks our country's second Independence Day. Even though the Emancipation Proclamation was made effective in 1863, it could not be implemented in places still under Confederate control. As a result, in the westernmost Confederate state of Texas, enslaved people would not be free until much later. Freedom finally came on June 19, 1865, when some 2,000 Union troops arrived in Galveston Bay, Texas. The Army announced that the more than 250,000 enslaved Black people in the state were free by executive decree. And this day came to be known as Juneteenth, as everyone knows, by the newly freed people in Texas. The historical legacy of Juneteenth shows the value of never giving up hope in uncertain times, end quote. And then I kind of wanted to add, in 2 days on June 12th, it's what is known as Loving Day. Again, a lot of you might be familiar, but some may not. It's not quite as well known. It's the anniversary of a historic court decision in 1967, which is Loving versus the state of Virginia, and that legalized interracial marriage nationally. And I draw this connection because while I'm white passing, my dad, Mark, is the result of an interracial marriage in 1952, so 15 years before the Loving case. I didn't know much about my Black grandpa, William D. Richardson, but I do honor his strength and determination, and I acknowledge the deep sacrifices made by all of my Black ancestors and who may have been enslaved. And I see and viscerally feel that resilience and really that of all Black Americans. So we're still fighting for equity, and we're still fighting to close those race-related disparities in so many areas of life. So this is why we acknowledge Juneteenth. It celebrates freedom from slavery for Black Americans, but it's really everyone's shared history and legacy to remember. So thank you very much for proclaiming, and thank you for your support.
Thank you.
Thank you. It's been requested that I read the proclamation, and so this is a proclamation in honor of Juneteenth 2025, June 19th, 2025. Whereas President Abraham Lincoln signed the Emancipation Proclamation on January 1st, 1863, declaring the enslaved people in the Confederate territory free and formally abolishing slavery in the United States of America. And whereas notification of the signing of the Emancipation Proclamation was delayed 2.5 years to June 19th, 1865, in reaching authorities and Black Americans in Texas and the southern states. And whereas June 19th celebrates the emancipation of enslaved Black Americans and the importance of fighting for freedom and justice. And whereas Juneteenth recognizes that the struggle for freedom and civil rights of Black Americans is an important part of our shared history and current experience for which we must continue to fight. And whereas our community is enriched when we consider these challenges and proactively work for a more equitable and just world. And whereas in partnership with the Tigard-Tualatin School District, the City of Tigard celebrates the freedom of Tigard's Black community members as Juneteenth Freedom Day celebration on Saturday, June 14th, with event coordination assistance by community members Juma Watley and Cindy Murphy. Now, therefore, be it resolved, the City of Tigard Mayor does hereby proclaim her support for designating June 19th as Juneteenth in Tigard, Oregon. Let this day be an opportunity for the city and its residents to gather and acknowledge our country's painful history while we celebrate our vibrant community and continue to build a culture of inclusion and acceptance.
Thank you.
Thank you. Sure, that'd be great. Yeah, thanks. I forgot to add too, we have flyers for Juneteenth at the door. So the event's this weekend if you guys want to come. Thanks.
The next item on our agenda is public comment. If you'd like to provide public comment by video or by phone, please call in now or log in to get into the queue. The phone number is 503-966-4101. Anyone in the audience wishing to provide public comment today, there is a sign-up sheet at the entrance of the room if you'd like to sign up. There was one written comment received requesting amending the youth counselor bylaws. And for in-person public comment, we don't actually have anyone signed up, and I didn't see anyone sprinting to the front of the room. So we will move on to phone or video. Mr. Miller, are there any phone callers in the queue or anyone wishing to comment by video today?
I do not have anyone today.
Did you hear that?
I don't have anyone today.
Okay, thank you so much. Anyone, if you want to comment on agenda item 7, which is the legislative public hearing, please wait for that agenda item. The next item on our agenda is the city manager report with City Manager Stockwell. Welcome to week 2.
Thank you, Mayor. Councilors, more than 40 people participated across the 2 Move with the Mayor events in May, and participants were eligible to receive gift cards donated from local businesses, Everbowl, Daily Nutrition Tigard, and the Tigard Farmers Market. Next week, we'll have 2 new police officers starting, Jules Erickson and Spencer Niesner. They will attend the academy in late July. It's been a while since we've had a new officer, let alone 2. We see this as a sign that the recruitment and selection process changes are working. Last Saturday, the summer kickoff health and fitness event was at Universal Plaza. It was full of families enjoying the splash pad, food carts, and vendors from the event. Also, more than 200 people are registered in the Tigard Festival of Balloons Fun Run. This event has continued to grow each year. There are already 1/3 more people signed up than participated last year, and there's still time for people to register until it closes June 16th. Our architect for the new Police and Public Works facility is touring our facilities this week and next to gain insight into existing operation and help shape plans for the new facility. The new dock at Cook Family Park has been placed and was open for this weekend. The next phase will be adding an additional accessible dock once funding is secured. And as you heard just a few moments ago, this weekend on Saturday, June 14th, the City of Tigard, in partnership with the Tigard-Tualatin School District, is excited to host Juneteenth Freedom Day celebration from 3 to 6 at Cook Park Shelter 4. And catering will be from It's a Vibe, and there's going to be local entertainment, dancing, and more. We really welcome all in the community to attend. So thank you very much, Mayor. That's my report for this week.
Thank you. Are there any questions for our city manager? No? All right. Seeing none, we will move on to the consent agenda. Thank you. And on the consent agenda tonight, we have library roof replacement materials. The consent agenda is used for routine items such as contracts or intergovernmental agreements. It may be enacted in one motion, or a councilor may remove an item for separate discussion. Are there any questions or comments today regarding our consent agenda? Yes, Council President Wolf.
I don't want to pull it if it's possible for me just to ask a couple of questions, if that's okay. So I just wanted clarification on the budget. The construction says it's $1.5 million, materials are $641, so I'm assuming the balance is just the cost and installation. That was one question, and then the second question was just an understanding of how many companies did a bid process when the RFP went out. And then just, I'm curious, as I tried to understand about the company, it looked like they were Midwest, East, and so are the materials local, or how does that work? So those are my three questions, so thank you.
Hi, for the record, this is Rosie McGowan, if I can respond.
Yes, please do, Rosie.
The contracts and purchasing manager. So to go through your questions that you had, the first one on the budget, I'll start with that. Our engineering team is here as well that can help provide information, but that is correct that this $641,000 is the cost of the materials, and so installation will be the remainder of that $1.5 million. There will also be a small portion of the materials, about 10%, that's not covered by this purchase itself. And then as for additional bidders, we are utilizing a cooperative purchase. So this was done through a ITB invitation to bid in, I believe it's Racine County. And that is through Omnia Partners, which we are a member of. They help with cooperative solicitations that are fair and open that other agencies are able to use. So it met Oregon standards. It was published in Oregon. And from their process, they did receive 2 bids when awarding to Garland is what they used. And so we're piggybacking off of that solicitation that they did. And then for the materials, Garland is a national company. Their services are provided across the U.S. and Canada and the U.K. The materials themselves are not local, so we will be ordering them, and I believe there's about a 4-week process or time period for getting those here. And then for the installation itself, we will be doing an open process for an invitation to bid for qualified contractors to be able to do that. So that would be going out here. We're hoping to get that out by the end of the month.
Rosie, thank you. I appreciate the information.
Yeah, Councilor Robbins?
Thank you. Thank you, Rosie. I have one more question. Did we actually do the invitation to bid 6 years ago in 2019? That seems odd.
We did not. So again, the whole solicitation was not something that we led. So cooperative procurements allow agencies to use procurements that follow our standards that were done by another agency. So that we did not do that. They did the solicitation 6 years ago. The contract is still active, so we're able to utilize it with regular pricing that is updated. So we have to use the terms and conditions and pricing of the agreement that came from that solicitation. And that is what groups like Omnia Partners, Sourcewell, other cooperative agencies help facilitate to ease the procurement process for purchases like this.
Counselor Hu?
Thank you, Mayor. And one more follow-up question. I assume the contract price includes shipping and storage, so there's no additional charge if we don't, we ask them to store the material until we're ready to use. Is that correct?
It includes storage through October. Our plan is to have it installed this summer, so that would incorporate the storage that is in our plans. It does also include some design services as well as construction oversight. So they will be there making sure that they're doing oversight on the installation so that we can maintain the warranty on those products. And
The consent agenda as presented.
I'll second.
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, all of those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion is adopted by unanimous vote of the council. Thank you, everyone. The next item on the agenda is a resolution reaffirming our commitment to equity. I want to thank Councilor Hu for helping me prepare this item. Before us tonight is a resolution that reaffirms the City of Tigard's deep and unwavering commitment to equity. And while resolutions like this may seem symbolic, I want to be clear, this is more than symbolism. This is a statement of values, a call to action, and a recognition that silence in the face of injustice is not neutrality, it's complicity. I've heard from Tigard community members who are scared and worried and have asked for our support. We live in a moment where members of our LGBTQIA 2S+ community are under relentless attack. Across the country, nearly 500 anti-LGBTQ bills were introduced in state legislatures in 2023 alone, targeting everything from gender-affirming care for youth to public drag performances to school curriculum. These bills aren't about policy, they're about erasure, fear, and control. And we're not immune in Oregon. According to the U.S. Department of Justice, in 2023, we had 315 reported hate crimes in our state. These crimes have biased motivations of race, religion, sexual orientation, disability, gender, or gender identity. The reality is likely higher, as not all crimes that qualify may have been reported as hate crimes. Perhaps most disturbingly, our Black transgender women face some of the highest rates of violence in our country. According to the Human Rights Campaign, at least 33 transgender or gender nonconforming people were fatally shot or killed in violent attacks in 2023, most of them Black transgender women. And we know that many of these deaths go unreported or misclassified. And these statistics, they're not just numbers, they're lives. They're siblings, friends, coworkers, artists, parents, and community leaders. They are people who deserve the same fundamental dignity and safety as anyone else. This resolution is grounded in data, but even more so, it's rooted in the foundational truth that every human being in our city has value simply by being, that no one should have to justify their existence to be protected, and that our policies and priorities must reflect the lived realities of our most vulnerable neighbors. Equity in the City of Tigard is not a checkbox or a trend. It is a responsibility. And as elected officials and community leaders, as human beings, we have the duty to show up for each other. This resolution is one step reaffirming our values and our commitment to building a Tigard where safety, belonging, and justice are not just privileges, but promises. It's about showing kindness to our fellow human beings. I want to thank the Equity Action Committee who also weighed in. There is an updated item in front of you. It has a couple of changes. It's been struck through. in purple to help sort of see what the recommended changes are. There's a couple of sections where instead of using the word regardless, the recommendation is to be inclusive of these items because we don't disregard these characteristics of our fellow human beings. And there was a change to add the word other. So again, I want to thank Councillor Hu. We looked at a wide variety of cities across the United States who are reaffirming the same thing. Some of those cities include Boston, Corvallis, Los Angeles, and Allentown, Pennsylvania. So we are in excellent company. And I want to open the floor up for discussion or questions. Or Councillor Hu, would you like to say anything?
Thank you, Mayor. I don't have such a well-prepared speech, but I'd just like to say I support this resolution because many of our civil rights that we saw once were secure are now being questioned and even being rolled back in many parts of our country. So I think it's important for state and local leaders as us to stand firm and reaffirm our commitment that everybody in our city, their dignity, just their lives are being honored. So that's why I support this resolution. So thank you for bringing this forward. And with that, I move to approve resolution number 25-18.
I second.
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, will the city recorder, can you confirm whether the amended, updated one from the Executive Advisory Committee is the one you're approving?
Yes, I move to approve resolution number 25-18 as amended by the Equity Committee.
Thank you. Councilor Robbins, do you concur with your second?
I do.
These microphones are really hard to get on and off. Just know they're tricky for us. Thank you so much. Will the city recorder read the name and number of the resolution?
Resolution number 25-18, a resolution reaffirming the City of Tigard's commitment to equity, the legal rights of LGBTQIA2S+ individuals, and its dedication to being a welcoming, safe, and inclusive city for all, with amendments.
Thank you. Will the city recorder please conduct a roll call vote?
Councillor Schlack,
Yes.
Councillor Shaw,
Yes.
Council President Wolf,
Yes.
Councillor Godusi. Oh, thank you. Councillor Hu.
Yes.
Sorry. Mayor Lube,
Yes.
Councillor Robbins.
Yes.
Thank you, everyone. The resolution is adopted by unanimous vote of the council. The next item on our agenda is a legislative public hearing, a FEMA ordinance. I will open the public hearing, and we have Senior Planner Lindor to present the item. Welcome.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Agnes Lindor, Senior Planner in the Community Development Department. So the item before you tonight is the public hearing for the FEMA and Endangered Species Act compliance amendments. In advance of this hearing, staff provided a memo to Council outlining the recent updates related to the litigation involving FEMA's implementation of the Endangered Species Act. As stated in the memo, representatives of FEMA and other federal agencies joined the plaintiff in asking the judge for suspending the court proceedings to allow the parties to discuss options on how to resolve the matter without further litigation. The new administration also announced that it will be likely altering its enforcement of the Endangered Species Act to reduce regulatory burden. So it's unclear on what that actually means for the flood insurance program. However, there is a possibility that the federal government may take a more flexible approach to these regulations. So based on this uncertainty and and consulting with our legal counsel, staff is recommending that City Council pause adopting the new regulations and continue the hearing to a future date of September 9th, 2005. It's unlikely that it will be resolved by then, but we should have more information on the direction that the administration will take. However, if the council chooses to move forward with the hearing tonight, I'm prepared to present the item. I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there questions or perhaps a motion?
Mayor, I move to continue the public hearing on ordinance number 25-05 to a time date certain of 6:30 p.m. on September 9th, 2025. And I'd like to add that at the Planning Commission presentation of these code amendments, there's a lot of interest from the community. I see a lot of community members here who I believe are likely here for this. So I think it'll be important to make sure that the community is notified that this public hearing is being pushed out for the reasons that you stated. Thank you.
I'll second the motion.
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, all of those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. We are continued to September 9th, 2025. Thank you. The next item on, oh yeah, Councilor
If there are
Gadusi.
community members that came to give a public comment, do they have the opportunity to do so, or do they have to wait?
I guess, do we have anyone signed up? Carol, are you able to check?
No one signed up.
Is anyone wishing to speak, or were you looking to listen? Because the information might change by the time it comes back. That would be my only hesitation of, okay. Thank you.
Is there any way we can find out what the ordinance and the changes are going to be so we can read up on it?
Agnes, would you be able to connect? Excellent. Agnes can help you. It's the benefit of being here. You get served right away. Thank you. Have a good night. The next item on our agenda is, I don't think we've ever moved this fast through our schedule. I should knock on wood. I apologize. That's what, oops. Yep, sorry about that. The next item is River Terrace 2.0 Housing Plan Update, and we have Senior Planner Gata and Assistant Community Development Director Warren to introduce the item. Welcome, you two. It's nice to see you in person. I saw you on, Teams earlier.
Good evening, Mayor Lube and councilors. Skylar Warren, Assistant Director of Community Development. I'm going to step away from the table here and allow Senior Planner Gata to present this item, but I did want to take the opportunity to formally introduce Brittany to the council. She is our new Senior Planner and the Project Manager for the River Terrace 2.0 project. So I will turn it over to you.
An excellent introduction. We love maps, so well done.
All right, how's that? Thank you. Okay, good evening, City Councilors. It's my pleasure to present the River Terrace 2.0 Housing Plan Update. Again, I'm Senior Planner Brittany Gata. Let's get the slides going, please. Great, thank you so much. Let's go to the next slide, please. Okay, so tonight we're going to be talking about the draft housing plan for River Terrace 2.0, and we're specifically asking for council's feedback on this draft approach. Next slide, please. Oh, excuse me, please go back one slide. That was my fault. Thank you. So there are 4 different topics that we're going to cover, the first being a general overview of what the housing plan contains. The second is the project schedule and what engagement we've done so far for the housing plan. We'll also touch on the draft housing approach. We're not going to go into great detail here since you all received the plan, but we'll touch on the broad strokes, and then we'll talk about next steps for the housing plan since it is still in draft form. Next slide, please. Okay, so let's start with the housing plan overview. Next slide. So the housing plan is intended to be a high-level approach that is guiding the project and basically creating the policies and the objectives that we need to figure out how to deliver on the ambitious housing-related goals that were first created with the concept plan and that have been refined for our community plan process right now. So once the housing plan is finalized, it's going to inform the creation of the community plan first and foremost. It'll also feed into the code amendments that we'll be drafting to the Community Development Code. And it'll also help us work on other implementation items such as the equitable finance strategy and other tools that we need to create in order to allow development to begin. The housing plan includes 3 primary sections, the first being those housing policies and objectives. Those are guiding our vision for housing. There's also a regulatory approach included, which includes housing types and density rules at a high level. And the last section is supporting strategies that the city could choose to undertake to support some of the more challenging aspects of delivering housing in this community, such as providing regulated affordable housing. And the draft housing plan was informed by robust engagement, first with the general public. We also worked with 3 different advisory committees, being the Community Advisory Committee, the Technical Advisory Committee, and the Housing Advisory Committee. And also by the professional expertise from the city's very large consultant team working on this project, and also staff's experience as well. Next slide, please. So before we dive into the details of the housing plan, I'll just start by providing an update on where we are in the project schedule so far, and the engagement that we've been carrying out for the last few months. Next slide, please. One more slide, please. Great, that's slide 6. Perfect, thank you. Okay, so the project is currently in the second half of the project in the recommend phase. This is where the project team is continuing to work with the public and our advisory committees and other stakeholders. We're developing the recommendations for how to build the tools and the rules that are needed to get development ready in this area. And the next major phase of the community plan project is that draft code and plans part of the project. And we're currently on track for the plan adoption process to be held in fall of 2026, so next year. Next slide, please. Okay, so a lot of different engagement events and activities have gone into producing this first draft of the housing plan. The first is that we did hold a public open house back in early April. This was both held in person at the Tigard Public Library and also online. In person, we had about 80 people come to the library to participate, around 40 of which provided written comments. We also had 57 people participate online, so together we had about 100 written comments. And the open houses touched on a variety of different topics. It wasn't just housing, but for housing we talked about, we asked the public what types of housing types would they want to see in River Terrace 2.0, what's most important to you. For our advisory committees, we've had multiple meetings touch on housing-related issues. The first is the Community Advisory Committee. 2 of their 6 meetings has talked about housing. The Community Advisory Committee is about a dozen Tigard residents. They offer a wide range of lived experiences to help inform our work. The housing topics that we touched on with the CAC were specifically what types of housing should be allowed and what should be prioritized, also what the density approach could look like, and how to accomplish a mix of housing. The Housing Advisory Committee is the next group. All 4 of their meetings, as you might expect, focused on housing. And this is comprised of 15 local housing experts, and they're from a variety of backgrounds. Some are finance specialists, some are market rate developers or affordable housing developers, and some even have a real estate background. For this group focused mostly on feasibility and challenges relating to delivering on housing objectives. And they also helped us understand the potential regulatory approaches and how we might be able to meet housing objectives. And lastly, they provided a lot of insight on the effectiveness that potential strategies could have for their developments. The last advisory committee is the Technical Advisory Committee. They've had 3 meetings so far. One of their 3 meetings focused on housing, and they've talked about density considerations and housing mix, and the
So you're welcome to keep going. It's actually still being projected, and we have copies in front of us.
Incredible. Okay.
So
thank you for letting me
don't
know
let
that,
it
Mayor.
stop you.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Okay, so the Technical Advisory Committee is made up of jurisdictional and agency partners. So there are about a dozen different partners on that committee. Some examples would be Washington County, King City, City of Beaverton, Clean Water Services. The next bout of engagement focused on connecting with different specific groups through focus group activities. Can you move one slide forward, please? Thank you so much. The first focus group was with Spanish-speaking residents. We had a turnout of 10 individuals to that meeting, and the second focus group was with high school students, actually, and we had 8 students who are currently involved in the Tigard Youth Council or the Tigard High School Business Leaders Group. And they both provided a really unique set of experience and background about our housing questions. So the Spanish speaker focus group really focused on what types of housing would they prefer to see, and what those characteristics of the different housing types might look like. And they also talked about the density approach, while the students focused more specifically on needed housing for different groups. We're also hoping to have a third housing-specific focus group, which we're planning on connecting with an affordable housing development here in Tigard and meeting with some of their residents and staff to get their specific feedback. That is being planned in the coming months, but we do not have it scheduled quite yet. And if you could go back 2 slides, please. I think that'll get us on the right track. Perfect. And lastly, we have had a few one-on-one meetings with different housing experts. These have been as-needed meetings that have helped us fill in some gaps in the knowledge to create this draft housing plan. We've had 2 meetings so far which have focused on how to encourage more regulated affordable housing in the area and how to encourage less common housing types. We also met with a group of local market rate developers, which focused on the different challenges that they expect to see when providing a mix of housing types. Next slide, please. Great. So what have we heard from the community? We have consistently heard that the community's top priority is to see a wide variety of housing types in River Terrace 2.0. They want to see undersupplied housing options provided so that everyone's needs are met. Specifically the in-person and online open houses, we asked them what their top priorities would be for undersupplied housing, and the top 2 choices among all of the roughly 100 comments were homes for purchase at a variety of price points so that people of all income levels and households of all sizes have the ability to afford home ownership. And we also heard that homes without stairs was a top priority so that the neighborhood is welcoming for everyone, including seniors and people with mobility challenges. Another common theme is that the public wants to see housing needs met in this area while balancing the need to preserve natural resources. The community is generally supportive of distributing areas of higher density, again, as long as we're balancing those natural resource protections and making sure that those areas have good vehicular access. So that means that higher density areas in this plan are not only focused around commercial areas and busier roads, they're also sometimes near parks or open spaces as long as the areas, again, have good vehicular access where more traffic isn't going down local residential roads. And lastly, for the housing types that do not have private yards, the community provided feedback that they want to see shared green space or at least close proximity to parks and that walkability is of the utmost importance, both to achieve climate goals and just to make sure they have what they need close by. Next slide, please. Feedback from the development community has focused on slightly different aspects of how to provide housing in River Terrace 2.0. So the first one that we've heard from a variety of different types of housing developers is that surety, timing, and the ability to innovate are critical. So that means that providing clear development rules, streamlined and efficient land use processes, and opportunities for flexibility are seen as key for successful residential development in this area. We're also hearing that mitigating risk, especially financial risk, is of the utmost importance, especially for those smaller scale developers that we're hoping to encourage to work in River Terrace 2.0. And we're also hearing feasibility concerns about providing a mix of housing types. And this is stemming from the fact that most developers, at least not those very large scale developers, they don't typically provide multiple housing types in their repertoire. So these feasibility concerns have led to developers noting the need for strong incentives to help encourage providing a mix and to help things along. Also, the ability to get lender financing is a concern, especially for less common housing types that are typically provided or can be provided by smaller developers that are looking to mitigate risk. And lastly, the developers shared that centralizing density hubs, in contrast with what the community voiced as a priority, would be more feasible than that distributed model. So when comparing what we've heard from the community and what we've heard from developers, we are seeing that there is a gap between what the community is prioritizing and what the development community is telling us is feasible. So the approach that we're sharing with you this evening is trying to thread the needle between what is possible and possible from the developers' perspectives and what the community is hoping to see. So this approach does not completely close the gap. We recognize that there's more work to do and more investigations to find what incentives, strategies, partnerships can further close that gap. Next slide, please. Okay, so since the housing plan is in draft form, we have a little bit more work to do before it can be wrapped up. Very recently, on May 30th, we did submit this draft housing plan to the Department of Land Conservation and Development to meet a critical grant deadline, so that was an exciting step. We met with the Planning Commission back on June 2nd to go over the draft housing approach as well, and we got some great feedback from them. Our conversation mostly focused on the different complementary strategies that the city could choose to implement and how to accomplish desired outcomes, especially for undersupplied housing types. Again, we're hoping to have that housing focus group this summer. And once we receive council's feedback this evening and gather remaining community input, we will be refining and completing the housing plan. And then we'll move into drafting code amendments later this summer. Next slide, please. All right, draft housing approach. Next slide. Okay, so the draft housing approach is rooted in several policies and principles that are guiding our work, along with a handful of state and regional laws. So these guiding policies and principles that are included in the housing plan were first identified with the concept plan, but they've been refined along the way. So the first is that this draft housing plan reiterates a commitment to providing 20 dwelling units per acre across the development area. So that translates to roughly 3,000 new homes. Next, the community will deliver diverse housing choices. It again reiterates that commitment to serving all needs and affordability levels, and that comes along with integrating both market rate units and regulated affordable units. But it also recognizes the importance of lowercase affordable, specifically affordable home ownership for people of all income brackets. And the housing approach is also seeking to integrate with natural resources, parks, and commercial areas to balance development with preservation. Next slide, please. This slide shows the proposed land use map. You can see the commercial area, which is red towards the north side of the map, next to Shoals Ferry Road. There are also 2 mixed-use areas, which are shown in pink off of Bull Mountain and Beef Bend and Roy Rogers. There are also 3 residential land use designations on this map. The first is the yellow area, which is the lower residential density designation. The second is the lighter orange color, which is more of a medium density area, and the dark orange, which is supposed to be a higher density area. And lastly, the natural resource areas, as they've been mapped so far, are shown in green. So the lower density areas, which are in yellow, they are typically located in more constrained areas. They might not have as good of vehicular access, or there might just be other constraints like slope. Most of the area would be more of that light orange, medium density area, and the housing plan is calling for between 18 and 20 dwelling units per acre in the medium density land use area. And most of the housing mix is planned to be provided in this area where there's the most flexibility to provide different housing types. And the darker orange areas, as you can see on this plan, have been distributed across the area where there's good vehicular access. So that does place some areas very close to the commercial areas to help support the visibility and rooftops near that commercial. It's also along major transportation arteries to help support future transit service. But some areas are located close to parks and open space where they have good access. And lastly, the housing plan also lays out a form-based code approach. This is very high level, but it's laying out a framework for how to structure design rules around street frontage types. So the busier the road or less busy might have different design considerations, especially for pedestrian-friendly considerations. And also based on the housing type. So we're looking more at building scale for the design principles. Next slide. Okay, the last section of the housing plan is talking about complementary strategies. There's a long list of those in the plan, but they are either financial in nature, programmatic, or they're regulatory. These complementary strategies can help support the ambitious goals that were identified in the concept plan and are still being refined today. A lot of the strategies are talking about reducing risk, reducing cost, and how can we support smaller scale developers and developers of regulated affordable housing. And these complementary strategies can help bridge the gap between community needs and preferences and the development feasibility that we're hearing from the development community. Next slide, please. Okay, to wrap up the presentation, I'll go through some next steps for the housing plan. Next slide, please. So once we gather remaining community feedback, we're going to be working on refining the housing plan. And once it's wrapped up, we can then begin code amendment drafting work. And the next time that staff is going to be meeting with the City Council is to provide a transportation update. That meeting is on July 15th. Please excuse the error on the slide. It is not July 17th. So we will see you on July 15th for that next update. So that concludes staff's presentation, and we appreciate your feedback on the draft housing approach. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Senior Planner Gata. Great job. Well done for your first presentation. I'm a little worried. Yeah, it's echoey. Okay. Thank you so much. Questions for, yeah, Councilor Robbins?
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you for the presentation. I do have a couple questions. One, I was wondering, could you provide like a real life example for me of what it means to have density hubs around commercial versus spread out through it? And just as part, I'd love to hear like imagine if for what the community wants versus what the developer wants. And also, well, that's first. Let's do that.
I think I have an example for the more kind of traditional, higher density focused around commercial areas. aspect of your question. So if you think about Progress Ridge, just off of Shoals Ferry, that has higher density apartments right around that town center. And then it's still a relatively kind of medium to high density development, but as it moves away from the commercial areas, you get more townhouses rather than apartments, you get alley loaded residential, things like that. Skylar, do you know of the other option?
I guess I would point to historic downtown areas around the state. So you think even about Tigard's historic downtown and the areas directly surrounding it. Corvallis has some great examples of this in the downtown Eugene as well, Portland as well, where the density is not all, critically located right around the core, but you see throughout neighborhoods sprinkled in some smaller scale apartments here and there. You'll see some cottage developments, you'll see duplexes, triplexes, and they blend in seamlessly in those areas. And we can certainly provide, as we did with some examples of recent development, some examples where that shows up in a historic context. Part of the reason that we don't see it as much in more recent development is that until the last 8 years or so, all of that type of development had been made illegal. So we're only just now starting to see developments really incorporate a mix of housing, and this would be one of the first that's at this scale.
Thank you. So part of what I was envisioning was having commercial kind of intermixed with some of the living areas. And from the proposed land use map, I see the red at the top that's all commercial, and then the pink down kind of at the bottom and on the right that's mixed, right? Is that really so it's not really mixed with living with the commercial, which maybe was just my misimagining, but is it really within walking distance what's walking distance?
Yeah, great questions. To answer the last part first, walking distance could be a 10 to 20 minute walk, so that would be a half mile to a mile. And we did have a transportation analysis that is in the process, but it's assessing walk shed. So what percentage of the area can access the commercial areas within a 10 to 20 minute walk. So those numbers haven't been finalized, but it's kind of upwards of 3/4 of the area would be within a 20-minute walk. But that's just to those larger commercial areas, like you said, in red and in pink. In the higher density residential zones, this was not represented on the land use map. We are also hoping to expand home occupation allowances, which would allow more entrepreneurship opportunities in those higher density zones. So that could create more opportunities to meet needs, access services right in your community.
We can just go down the line. Councilor Hu, if you want to go.
Thank you, Mayor. Wow, this is loud. So I just want to follow up on Councilor Robbins' request. I would really like to see 3D simulation, like a YouTube video of what this is going to look like, on those 3D videos, like from different angles. Like I believe when the Max Line proposal coming to Tiger, they actually did a 3D video of how that's going to look like. So I would really want to see something like that, because for me, looking at this color-coded map, it's difficult for me to visualize how that's going to look like. Second of all, that the state just recently, not so recently, but they released their first housing need analysis. And in that analysis, they have Tiger-specific data saying, in the next 20 years, this is the type of housing we need. I think they have 5 different income levels. So how much was that? How much did this take into consideration? Did we model after that as a need? So how would this address those 20-year needs of different housing type? Can you comment on that?
So, Councilor Hu, the city's housing work is shaped by the housing needs analysis the city conducted for the HNA that was adopted in 2021. So we have been following the Oregon Housing Needs Analysis work, particularly around the allocations to the different income bands. And we had actually asked, having seen early drafts of that for the consultant team who was working on our housing needs analysis back in 2021, to do similar work. They didn't do it quite to the level of detail that was done at the state, but we have looked at that across income bands and where the greatest need is there. We haven't fully incorporated everything that shows up in the Oregon Housing Needs Analysis because it's not a regulatory document yet for us. It's setting targets for us, but there are really more targets that would apply when we get to the next stage for our Housing Needs Analysis update, which is coming in the relatively near future. But we're aware of that, we're tracking it, but really the guiding light for us is the HNA that was adopted in 2021.
Thank you. I have more questions, but I will let other councilors ask first.
Go ahead. Yeah.
Okay. So also follow up on Councilor Robbins' question. It would be helpful for me to have an idea of other commercial like stores and services map outside of this immediate area, because to me, if you just have red at the very top, I don't know what other services and commercial stores are being provided around, River Terrace 2.0. So I have no idea. I just need more context of why this is the commercial area, why this is mixed area, because I don't know what's outside. I don't live there, so it would be helpful to have that kind of map as well. So yeah, that's all I have for now. So thank you.
I can just tell you there's not a lot right now. If you're looking at the map for 13, there's two big squares that are empty right now. Those are anticipated to be mixed-use apartments with commercial down below that I believe due to a wide variety of factors have not yet been developed. So that is the only mixed use that I am aware of in that area, only because I'm intimately waiting so I can walk there, hopefully to restaurants, for a very selfish reason. And I'm sure Councilor Schlack probably feels the same way because he lives across the street.
Yes, definitely. Coffee shop there would be wonderful someday. I just wanted to add that as far as what's on the other side, what's just north of the red area for Southwest Shoals Ferry is Mountainside High School. The tennis court area is the sort of blue dot there. And really the only other commercial areas that are nearby, you have to go to the sort of Safeway that's off of Barrows, or you have to go into the Murray Hill area, none of which is in a walkable distance. Even Progress Ridge would be a bit of a trek to get over there. So just wanted to add that additional context.
There is just that one little area on the corner that has like the Dutch Brothers and then a couple of restaurants across the street. That's technically walkable, but it would be a bit of a stretch. I think it's at least a mile plus from my house. So there's not a lot. So what I will just say is the interspersing probably breaks it out to where everybody would be able to walk to the area around them, if that's helpful.
Yes, that's very helpful. Thank you.
Councilor Shaw. Did you have something to add? Sorry. We sort of took over the answer.
No, I do have an update on the commercial market analysis that we've been working on. That also isn't finalized, but we have a near complete draft that did assess different options for where that primary commercial area should be. The option that was shown on the land use map is what it was ultimately recommended by the commercial analysis. So I won't discuss where the other one was, but the reason why that one was recommended was for the reasons that the council is noting on this evening, that there aren't any walkable areas, and those areas there is enough competition further away that there could be a critical mass of residential development within the River Terrace 2.0 to support a larger commercial area over here. And there's also a lot of residential development going in a little bit further north in Beaverton that would also be supporting a commercial area off of Shoals Ferry. And then Mountainside High School was noted as a significant draw for that commercial area as well.
Councillor Shaw?
Senior Planner, GATA. Am I saying that correctly?
It's GATA. Thank you for
GATA.
asking.
Thank you, GATA. Thank you very much. So I have a number of questions. The first is on the concept plan that was laid out in 2021, and this is just a question. It has different colors on the plan use map than the one that was recently done. Is there a reason for that? Because it was hard to compare. Like commercial is purple on the 2021, and in the most recent one, it's red. But is there, should there be consistency? Because it's just hard to compare and contrast.
I'll take that one. It probably would be helpful to use consistent color coding. I will say that each consultant team and each group of people that you gather has sort of different ideas about how to represent these things. And one of the challenges that we face is that color coding has a lot of intrinsic meaning in the world of land use and planning. And so we try to be careful about how things are noted. It's not always possible because there's only so many colors in the rainbow that you can use to represent things on a map. But it's important to note that in both of those cases, these are still conceptual. They don't represent zones necessarily. They represent ideas about where things could be. And so, I guess what I would offer is that think of these more as blobs, sketches, and as we get to the next phase of refining into the zoning map, that's where these things start to take on more meaning. This one is a little bit more refined than the one that appeared in the concept plan. One of the other reasons that we've stepped away from doing a one-to-one comparison is that there are, as we've moved into refining the housing approach here, some of the concepts that were included in the concept plan may not hold the same power as we've learned more from the community and as we've learned more from the development community. So things like the feathered edge, which was intended to be this middle housing focused, lower density area that would be located near natural areas. That's a little bit harder to implement from a zoning perspective than originally anticipated. And it's not that we aren't keeping those ideas in mind as we develop regulations for development that would be along those areas. It's just that it may not take the form that it did in the concept plan, where it is a defined area that has defined characteristics. It might be just that if you abut a natural area, there are certain development requirements that would apply that would allow you to integrate development into the natural area without impacting it greatly. So I hope that kind of explains why there's a little bit of a disjunction there, and we'll continue to refine, and we'll try to do some more work to make comparisons between what you've seen in the past and what you will continue to see.
Great. Thank you. I appreciate that. Also in the River Terrace 2.0 concept plan that was laid out in 2021, did that include the overall minimum, sorry, my questions are on my computer, density of 20 dwellings per unit per acre?
Yes, it did, and that ultimately came from the mandate to undertake this work back in 2019, before even I was working on the project. In the conversations with development community and council, the decision was made that if this was going to be pursued, that it was going to be pursued in a way that was focused on delivering housing. Back in 2019, housing needs were as bad as they are today, and so the mandate was really to develop the area in a way that would provide as much housing as possible for our community.
Great, thanks. And just for my benefit, later on, can you send that to me? Because I couldn't find exactly where it had stated that in the plan. So that'd be terrific, thank you. And then also, was the housing mix included in that 2021 plan? So hypothetically, if you had an acre of land, it included all the different types of housing, as well as if it was 5 acres or 80 acres? So were all the density types included in that plan, or is that just in the most current plan?
So that's a good question. Again, when you go back to the concept plan, we're talking in bubble diagram fashion. So the concept at that time did not look at property lines really at all. The closest we came to looking at property lines and who had 5 acres and who had 20 acres was in trying to align some of the transportation infrastructure, because as much as possible we would try to make that follow property lines so that there's equal dedication on either side. It's also worth noting that it's not always possible to do that, because just property lines don't always line up with where the ideal location for a transportation facility would be. It's only once we've gotten into this housing plan that we've started to look at, kind of where property lines are and where density is located. But it's also important to note that in these kind of development areas where a lot of lot consolidation and site assembly happens prior to the development, we saw that in River Terrace 1. Sometimes the property lines don't matter as much. Sometimes there are property owners who have only like 5 acres who want to develop on their own. And we try to balance that against knowing that larger developers will come in and assemble sometimes, 80 to 100 to 150 acres to develop all at once. And when that happens, the impacts to any one individual property owner aren't as great, because the site has been assembled into a whole, and so impacts of zoning here versus zoning here don't have as much impact. And I guess again, to go back to what Brittany was saying, there's a tension here, and we acknowledge that, right? There's a tension between what the current property owners would like to see in terms of return on the value of their property as they convert it to developable land. And we also have to recognize that there's a tension on the other side with the future of the Tigard community, right? So it's important that we balance decisions for someone today with decisions that will live with the community for generations to come. So we've tried to, as Brittany said, thread that needle as carefully as we can. And as with any compromise, you come out on the other end with not everyone being probably 100% happy with the outcome.
I have a number of more questions. Thank you for the zoning map. I appreciate that. And it shows, because I believe I sent a question about what exactly is Res A, Res B, Res C, Res D, Res E. And perhaps I don't necessarily need to know that tonight, but I realized I don't know why there's different A, B, C, D, E, and what that means. So I don't know if that's something that could be answered now, or if you want to just take it offline.
Yeah, I can give you the nuts and bolts, and we can always talk offline if you have more follow-up questions. But in the housing plan, it does mention that the 3 residential land use designations and the zoning districts that would be created based on those would roughly be based on Res C, Res D, and Res E, like you mentioned. So D, C, and E are the more medium to higher density residential zoning districts in Tigard. And if we just talk about the uses, they have a range of different housing types that are allowed in those areas, and that can kind of give you an idea for what they might look and feel like. So in the Res C, more medium density area, it's more middle housing, so the small form residential, which is up to 3 units on a property. It does allow some limited row houses as well, and then of course single detached houses would be allowed in that small form bucket. And then moving up in intensity, you have Res D, which does allow apartments. So that's where we start to see more taller and more intense development. And it also allows row homes without any limitations. So you just have taller buildings and a larger building scale. And then Res E is more of that apartment-focused zone. It does allow other housing types like row houses again, but it's really that highest level of residential intensity that Tigard's current development code has.
Thank you very much, because I saw it was mentioned, the Eco Northwest report, and I realized I did not know what it was, so thank you. Perhaps two additional questions, and then I'll save the rest for later. In the Eco Northwest River Terrace 2.0 housing plan, it appears that the development concept has not been done before, and River Terrace 1.0 has really been a success and a model of success. So is this something that we're replicating in another part of the United States? And thank you, too, for sending the examples of Bend that were very specific and just a subdivision and infill. But is this something that's been done before, or is this like, we're going to try it and see if it works? Because, again, River Terrace 1.0 was such a success that it seems like we'd want to kind of model after that. And then I have one other question after this. Thank you.
Yeah, so it's a great question about precedent. Certainly, in terms of UGB expansion areas in the metro area and Oregon in general, 20 units per acre is an ambitious target, right? It is double what the goal was, the baseline goal 20 years ago. If you were doing a UGB expansion, 10 units per acre was considered, what your target is. That is in part owing to, as we mentioned, that great housing need that's out there. As Councilor Hu mentioned, Oregon Housing Needs Analysis shows that there's so much housing need, and that it's in the unit types that are not being developed in those 10 unit per acre developments. If you're going to get the smaller unit starter homes, the homes for seniors, the zero step entry homes, the affordable home ownership units, you really have to get into that 20 units per acre level. It's interesting that 20 units per acre is considered kind of high density in these areas, because really when you look at it, it's not all that high density, and it doesn't read as high density. It's really more of a medium density. As I mentioned before, there are some great historic examples of 20 units per acre. I saw a few in Denver at the National APA conference this year, and you would not really, be able to tell these apart from a typical single detached home dominated neighborhood. Some of them had duplexes and triplexes that just don't look like duplexes and triplexes. In terms of new development, we do see some out there. There's a development, I believe it's in Iowa, called Prairie Queen. We've looked at some other precedents for that around the area. And then with infill, there's some precedent for 20 units per acre as well. You really kind of see it in areas where housing was allowed with very little regulation, so that multiple units were being built side by side with single detached homes. And so again, it goes back to some of those historic neighborhoods that you see in smaller town centers around the state and really around the country.
Great. So how many units per acre then were in River Terrace 1.0?
I think as built out, it's somewhere between 14 and 16 is where we're landing, and that's what we're seeing generally in the UGB expansion areas already. And you mentioned River Terrace 1 as a great example of development done right, and we wholeheartedly agree. And River Terrace 2.0 is precisely what the name reflects. It's intended to be an iteration on that, right? How do we continually improve? Because we know that there are some great things about the River Terrace 1 neighborhood, and we also know that the neighborhood is not accessible to everyone that really needs access to housing, and great schools and great trails. And so we're trying to be mindful about how we can continue to deliver on what we're hearing from the community, their housing needs are, in a way that reflects our commitment to making great neighborhoods.
Great. And then how many houses then were in River Terrace 1.0? Because River's shooting for 3,000 and
You're
2.0.
testing my, I think we were at 2,194 units
precise.
as of,
Okay. Okay.
yeah.
Approximately would work.
Yeah.
Great. And then last question. Electrification is mentioned very briefly in the report as just a word, electrification. Do you know from Eco Northwest, from the consultants, what they were envisioning? Is it, charging in every garage? Is it a hub spot at a park? Is it 100% electrification, which would be a big concern? But is that something TBD, to be coming, or
Yeah, that's a fair characterization of it. I mean, we know that there's a movement toward electrification of different parts of our built environment and also just our transportation system. So it could take the form of charging, whether it's neighborhood charging. We probably won't have a fueling station, a petroleum fueling station in this area. So how can we meet community needs, especially where, there might be density that doesn't allow someone to have, a charger in their garage, right? How do we implement community charging opportunities? It could be in electrification of infrastructure. It could be in electrification of homes. But there's more to be explored there, right? I mean, there's not a mandate implied or explicitly stated in that housing plan, so don't want to give that sense at all, but that is an area of conversation.
Great. And perhaps just a last thought, not a question. Given the electrification costs, and if you have multiple parks, that just adds to the cost of homes. So if we're trying to keep the costs low, we should really look at what that charge is going to be, what the developer would charge. So just something to look for down the future as we're trying to keep this affordable. Thank you, Mayor.
Council President Wolf?
Thank you, Mayor. A lot of great questions, comments. So I'll keep mine brief to add to it. And I think it really just complements what's already been asked. For me, I really sat with the report and attempted to do math, right? And so, Skylar, thank you for the recommendations. I've been by neighborhoods, and it is that kind of vision of more the model homes, what they might look like versus what will River Terrace 2.0 look like? And that's what I'm really struggling with, is almost like I have said before, I want like the little monopoly houses in buildings so I could truly build what the vision is to create, because that's what I'm wrestling with. Even as I tried to go, okay, lowest density, if I back into that with a goal of 20, it still seems significant smaller, and maybe that's okay, but I'm just trying to understand the reference points. What kind of true house does that look like? And then, Bernie, I appreciate, the reference of the gaps. As you guys might know, I joined Councilor Schlack at Planning Commission just to listen to the conversation. And so the desires and needs of community members, many of us have heard from developers, and the concerns about, here's our specialty, this is what we do, we don't do this mix. So as those answers to the gaps really gain clarity and specificity, I look forward to those deeper conversations, because I think that's just my biggest thing, is at a high scale and then really trying to break it down to understand the vision and how we serve that. So I guess that's more of a comment or a request to tack on what's already been shared. And I think the only other thing I was thinking is, as you've gained input, and we have this is what Tigard needs, this is what developers want, and community desires. So do we also talk to real estate agents of varying levels, right? Because I'm sure many of them have kind of their niche markets that they serve, of what they're hearing, like who, and I'm not saying, just go talk to realtors who, sell $1 million homes, which I know are in part River Terrace 1.0. I really appreciate what the goal is to accomplish in 2.0, but it's that kind of what are, people demanding, or who wants to move to Tigard that really does meet all those goals? And then how do we balance that with Greenland's slopes that aren't developable, and developers that can, build all the things that we want to build in some harmonious way? So, and then I guess my final comment is, as owners, listen to this, and Skylar, you made the point, they're also wrestling their own ROIs. Where does their voice come into this process? So that's enough for me.
Thank you, Council President Wolf. So on the Housing Advisory Committee, we do have a couple real estate professionals. I wouldn't say that they're at a variety of levels, but I think the key takeaway is that we're still continuing to investigate how to further close that gap. Okay. So there's a lot more to be done. I appreciate your suggestion to work with multiple levels of real estate developers and professionals that can help us. In terms of the property owners, we do have one property owner who is a part of our Community Advisory Committee. We also have a running interested parties list that is primarily composed of property owners either in River Terrace 2.0 and also residents of River Terrace 1. And that group is going to be looped in more and more as we continue through the process. As we have more to share, those groups will be engaged more and more. And we also have another open house coming up this summer, so that will be yet another opportunity to engage with the groups that you're mentioning. So more to come.
Okay, thank you.
I might also offer, just on the real estate piece, we've also talked with Proud Ground frequently, as we're partners with them on our current affordable homeownership program, and they their staff is trained as real estate experts as well, and can help us kind of understand the affordability piece of homeownership as well. We've worked with the former director of Rooted Homes in Bend, which is another community land trust that does new development. Actually, their director used to be at Proud Ground, left to work at Rooted and came back and is now at Reach. So they've been a great resource as well. And then we've talked with a few developers that have worked with them or have some experience in this area, and just to be able to get some feedback from them on what are some things that we're not seeing or that we should consider, or are there other case studies that they're aware of that we could tap into. So, we aren't looking specifically necessarily at real estate agents, but like different tiers of actors who are participating in the real estate market on the affordable side and the market rate side.
Councilor Stark?
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you to my colleagues for all of their questions and comments. There's a lot of overlap, I feel, with a lot of our interest in what we want to see in River Terrace 2.0 in order to make it succeed. I'd like to just take this opportunity to express sort of what my focus is, which is really something I think you both touched on, which is to make sure that these are livable neighborhoods and great communities to live in. And that sort of requires a holistic approach when we think about trails, parks, access to schools, access to commercial areas, like, an Anchor grocery store, gas stations, access to public transit. I spend a lot of time in River Terrace 1.0 because I live there. And it's just, you do feel like you're on the edge of the urban growth boundary. So how do we try to make it more connected in with the urbanized areas so that way people have access to some of those features that I listed? I also want to just sort of reiterate my desire that I always take time to reiterate whenever we talk about housing, which is a desire to see more single-level housing options, just because I think this council is committed to making Tigard a great place to age in place, and people obviously have different mobility needs, especially as folks age, so it's really important that we have single-level options. I mean, speaking from personal lived experience, my grandparents both had Parkinson's, and the only reason they were able to stay in their small sort of 1970s home that they had lived in for 50 years was because it was a single level, and we were able to adjust it as we could, so that way we could get my grandmother out of her bedroom into the bathroom, into the living room, and back and forth every day. And I know that's not just my family's experience, that's the experience of many families in our community. So that's always, whenever housing comes up, I want to beat that drum as much as I can. And then finally, I think you both sort of touched on this already, but I'd love to get a more elaboration on plans to facilitate affordable home ownership, just because home ownership is really becoming out of reach for an entire generation of Americans. It's something I understand very well, just having sort of gone through that struggle of trying to become a homeowner with my partner. So I'd love to hear just a little bit more detail of how we're currently doing that as a city and how that would inform River Terrace 2.0. Again, I think it's been touched on, but that's my specific question. Thank you.
I'll take what we're currently doing piece of this, and maybe I'll hand it off to Brittany for how we're incorporating that into the River Terrace 2.0 work. The city has been committed to affordable home ownership as a critical means to economic mobility in the city for quite some time now. Beginning in 2019, we implemented a construction excise tax to fund affordable housing. Part of that goes to the SDC exemptions for regulated affordable housing that's for rent. The balance of it, along with our community development block grant allocation from the federal program, goes toward affordable homeownership. That is a down payment assistance program that is managed by Proud Ground. The great thing about that program, to just remind the council and let the public know, is that the city's investment in those affordable homeownership units is permanent. So when that homeowner goes to sell the unit, it is sold to another homeowner who is income qualified, so making 80% AMI or less. And yet, the homeowner has been able to build equity, and there will be some appreciation of the home. So they actually are able to take the money back out from that home and be able to roll that into the next step in their home ownership journey. The city also in 2021 allocated a portion of its American Rescue Plan Act allocation toward affordable housing development in the form of a middle housing revolving loan fund that provides acquisition, pre-development, and construction lending at a low fixed interest rate to developers of qualified middle housing, under the stipulation that 30% of the units are provided to buyers who are supported by that down payment assistance program that is funded by the city. So it's a win-win-win for everyone. The developer gets to sell the units at market rate. The homeowner gets to buy a new home in a mixed income development, and we're gaining permanent affordability through that investment. And then the money is returned to the city, and it's used for the next loan. So we anticipate bringing, well, I'm going to spoil it for you here. We anticipate bringing those initiatives as well as others to bear in the River Terrace 2.0 area to be able to foster affordable homeownership, because we know that we're not going to be able to intervene by doing things like land purchases or land banking. So it will have to be those strategic investments that are very targeted and allowing the market rate developer community to actually do what they do, and that we come in with subsidy on the back end to help homeowners get into those units. And I'll proudly say that one of the most recent affordable homeownership units that the city was able to support is actually in the River Terrace 1 neighborhood. So that's already happening to some degree. Do you want to add anything?
Sure. As you've probably gathered from Skylar's explanation, to be able to deliver both regulated affordable units and then lowercase affordable units, either for purchase or in a rental format, you need a lot of different strategies to try and help bring those costs down. So what the housing plan is doing is trying to identify which of the kind of huge array of strategies that are possible, which would have a notable impact on housing cost. And that's an inexact science, as we know, but there are a variety of different tax exemptions, expansions of the programs that Skylar already mentioned that could help lower costs. And some of it too is reducing not only development costs, but the time that it takes for development to happen. So the amount, just the indirect cost that is incurred when a developer holds on to land while they're waiting to develop it, that can also add cost. Infrastructure costs to support that housing. So all of these things need to be targeted individually by different strategies to try and create that multi-pronged approach.
Councillor Gadusi?
Thank you. Most everything that I was going to ask about has already been discussed. Overall, I can sort of see what it's going to look like with the proposed land use map. So I can kind of envision most of it. So the last thing I want is another consultant to create a 3D structure. But if that's what's needed to do it. One of my concerns in terms of looking at how this might end up looking ends up being looking at those arterials and the overall flow to and from Bull Mountain. I know that you're doing the transportation update in July, so I guess I'll defer any questions to that one specifically. But in looking at the overall image of what this proposed land use map would be and the future of Tigard specifically, if I remember correctly, the Lossage property that had been discussed with Parks would be down and just west of the mixed use with the commercial on the ground floor. Is that correct? So it would be sort of across the street from Roy Rogers. Yep. Okay. That sounds how you gave me. Perfect. Thank you. Just trying to put it all together.
Thank you. My questions. So you're the only one who had my question, which was kind of around Bull Mountain Road, and not so much a question, but more of a hope of, I know that community members have complained about the increase of traffic on Bull Mountain because it is the east-west connection. So it's the people, I mean, all over the road. And so I would just want to make sure as we're developing this area, we're truly looking at Bull Mountain Road and the improvements that we need to make it safer. Because the amount of people who are in the ditch in that corner, my neighbors talk about it all the time, how often they see people in a ditch from the corner being taken too quickly. And there's absolutely, I mean, there's no safe place to walk. So, you know, if we're looking at making those connected neighborhoods, and getting people across, my hope is that now Bull Mountain is going to get on the list of being more seriously looked at. I do agree with Councillor Schlack. I will say for the single level homes, just an anecdote of the neighborhood that I live in has single family homes, multifamily homes, and also some of the single family homes are single level. And I will say that it's grandparents in those houses. And it provides a really cool opportunity for my neighborhood to truly be diverse. There's all income levels, there's all moments of life, and it is a vibrant neighborhood where we're all outside spending time together building that community. So if that part of River Terrace 1.0 we can continue to replicate to build those strong communities by getting people out of their homes to connect with each other, I think that is a huge win. I also want to say I really appreciate looking at these natural areas. I was lucky enough to be invited by homeowners last year to really take a tour of what these natural areas are, and they're very cool, just the streams that go through it and the wildlife that is supported. And so my hope is that when we are strategically looking at things like trails, being able to place trails nearby so people can walk by and enjoy these areas while they're also being preserved. And, you know, neighborhood pocket parks, so people can go to the park and use the trail to get connected and walk by. I think there's even like a beaver in one of them that there's several dams. Like it's very cool if you get the opportunity to go back there. My last real question that's not a comment is, I know we're balancing both the community and the neighbors and our developers. Are we looking at something kind of like in the Tigard Triangle where we have a more lean, straightforward code that facilitates in development? Is that kind of what we're aiming for in this area at all?
Well, I would say even if we weren't aiming for it, the state will probably get us there anyway. Yeah, we would want to have something that balances, enough design standards and enough sort of vision for the area that we can replicate all the great parts of River Terrace 1 that make it that great neighborhood. Things like River Terrace Boulevard, the multi-use path, all that kind of stuff. But we definitely don't want to over-regulate form, right? We want to focus on the pedestrian experience, and we want to focus on the massing of the building, but we don't want to get too much into the weeds of, design restrictions. And at this point, we won't probably be able to go there anyway with changes in state law, so it's probably good that we were already headed there. But, our focus is really on the public realm as much as anything.
Thank you. Do you feel like you got the robust feedback that you were looking for?
Yes, definitely. Thank you all so much.
Are there any final questions? Yeah, Councillor Shaw.
Great, thank you so much, and look forward to the model. I think some of us are visual, so that really helps. Also, how does budget play into the housing plan, the next one that's going to be reiterated? And the reason I ask is we already know that our parks and trails are nowhere near the funding level that we need to maintain them all. So this is going to be adding a whole host of additional parks and potentially trails. So is that taken into review when we're looking at this as to whether to have one bigger park as opposed to smaller parks? So how is the budget element reviewed in this plan, or will be reviewed?
It's another great tension that's identified, right? There's the paying for the stuff up front, the parks and the roads being built, and then there's paying for them in the long term. System development charges are the way that we do it up front, but those can't be used, long term for maintenance. In River Terrace 1, there is a supplemental parks maintenance fee that goes specifically to help ameliorate some of the additional costs of maintenance in that neighborhood because it is so parks heavy. We also recognize in working with our public works team and our park staff that really it's not that River Terrace 1 was over provisioned with parks. It's just that we can be more targeted in the way that we allocate parks. And so one of the things that we've done is we've dialed back from the numerical based level of service standard for parks, because if we used that formula, it would cause us to generate even more and more parks in the River Terrace 2.0 area. So what we're working with our consultant Walker Macy on is a level of service that is more based on the performance of the system and the geographic location of parks and their context. So we're looking at that rather than a formulaic approach to parks. And so I think that's going to help us to right size the parks infrastructure that we put in place there. Obviously, I want to acknowledge there is the ongoing tension with maintenance of those parks and storm facilities and all of the stuff that's going to be out there. And I wish I had, the solution for council for how we would propose to do that, but I don't, unfortunately. I mean, it is something that we're in conversation with people who are much smarter than me across the street in Public Works about, and we'll continue to look at strategies to make sure that we can make this area pencil out as much as possible.
Well, thank you, and I hope we get to see kind of an outline of what that budget looks like along with the kind of a visual as well. Thank you.
Councillor Hu?
Thank you, Mayor. Just reiterate, I also want to see the 3D model. So, yeah, and I also echo Councillor Shaw's concern with budgeting with park maintenance and Mayor Loop's concern about traffic because we're going to add so many, or at least we plan to add so many people. But my request is really, it's good that the concept plan identify many development challenges, but it will be helpful to me to say, this is the challenge, and this is how we are going to address these challenges, just point by point, So right now there are so many challenges, so it's overwhelming, and I don't know how we are going to overcome those challenges. So if you could just specifically address how each challenge will be addressed, that would be very helpful too. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you all very much.
Yeah, thank you.
Did you get more than you bargained for?
No, thank you so much.
The next item on our agenda is the Tigard Enterprise Zone Renewal, and we have Economic Development Manager Halther to introduce the item. Welcome.
It's all right. When I was last year on May 6th, my agenda item went 25 minutes over, so this is great. Good evening, Mayor and Council. Danelle Halther, Economic Development Manager for City of Tigard, here tonight to talk about a proclamation in front of you requesting your approval to apply for redesignation of our enterprise zone. It was last year, May 6th, introduced the topic as well as provided analysis of our enterprise zone that is expiring at the end of this month, including an overview and performance report of the last 10 years of history. Council at that point did make the recommendation going forward to pursue designation. Since then, we have held our public hearing on the topic, including a 21-day advance notification of all of our taxing jurisdictions and interested stakeholders. We had so much interest that no one showed up. And to make sure that it wasn't a fluke, we did reach out to a couple of our partners to verify, hey, do you have any comments on this? And across the board, resounding support to move forward. So that happened all about a week ago. Proclamation in front of you tonight is the last piece that we need in order to move forward with submitting our application, because the other thing that happened since the last time we saw you is we submitted our redesignation approval memo to Port of Portland, and we did get confirmation that it's on their consent agenda for the next meeting. Business Oregon has reviewed our application and is ready to receive. They have no further comments or questions. So the last thing that we're looking for from council is approval of the proclamation that you've got in front of you. Pending any questions.
Councilor Hoot, did you have any?
Yeah,
I know you have stuff, so.
Okay. Yeah, so I totally support the resolution, but I think my issue only concerns that this has been called the Tigard Lake Oswego Enterprise Zone since 2014. So the resolution is written, it's just jumped to Tigard Enterprise Zone. I understand all the partner now recognize it as the Tigard Enterprise Zone. So I would like to suggest a slight amendment to the title. So at the end of the title, I suggest we add parentheses previously Tigard-Lake Oswego Enterprise Zone and parentheses. I think that would just add further clarification and historic context of what it was to call before and what it's now called Tigard Enterprise Zone. So I emailed that suggestion to staff, and I asked them if they have any concern, please let me know. I haven't heard any concern, so I assume it's okay to add the parenthesis at the end of the title to just add further clarification.
The formatting and the wording is very specific based on the recommendation and request of Business Oregon on how they want to see the paperwork coming from us, because the application is for the zone going forward. They asked that the proclamation be titled what we want the zone to be called going forward, to keep it clean. There is a reference for historical purposes, both in the proclamation later on, as well as in all of the documentation and everything that we've talked about. The other thing is that trying to comply with how Business Oregon wants to see the the proclamation.
Resolution.
Sorry, resolution, thank you. Words matter, I appreciate that. Trying to honor how they're requesting it to be submitted to them and keeping it clean, simple, straightforward. This is what we want going forward. We did also check in and say, hey, coming off of the history, do you guys have any problems with this? And they said, actually, no, because it's commonly known as the Tigard Enterprise Zone anyway. So from the Business Oregon side,
So they have problem if we put parentheses previously?
it's not a problem. I will have to also submit another memo stating why we changed it. We can do whichever.
We're
you
not
would like.
changing the title, we're just
no,
providing
changing the-
historic context that this was called something else.
If the title in the resolution gets changed from Tigard Enterprise Zone, I will also need to submit a letter with our application to Business Oregon stating why it's anything but that.
Can I just ask the question? And I appreciate the discussion. Are there any other counselors supportive of adding the recommended changes? Or counselor, who would you like to make a motion to add the change? And we'll just to.
Well, I just don't want any issue with Business Oregon. If that's the issue, then I'm okay with. I'm just wondering, in the future, if somebody, a future council member or any committee member take a look at this and say, hey, this was a different name, so we're reauthorizing something that technically hasn't existed since 2014. But maybe I'm just overthinking, but sometimes I'm right when I'm overthinking, and, but again, any other counselor would be okay with it?
I just also want to add the last whereas says that it proposes to amend the zone boundary to remove a small sub-area that was located in Lake Oswego. So I think the body of the resolution addresses your concern while moving forward with Business Oregon's request. Councilor Gadusi?
Alternatively, because within the body, we can make some slight adjustments without changing the titles,
Yeah.
saying things like, whereas since 2014, the city of Tigard has sponsored a local enterprise zone covering employment in East and North Tigard, parentheses, previously known as Tigard.
Happy to do that, whatever you guys.
Okay, so as long as the title hasn't been changed,
Oh,
the
okay,
body
so-
of the resolution is okay. I'm looking for confirmation.
Okay, so I will propose on this very second sentence, it says, the Tigard Enterprise Zone Program, parenthesis, previously Tigard-Lake Oswego Enterprise Zone, and in parenthesis, offer incentive for new and expanding business, blah, blah. Is that?
I believe the recommendation was to put it under the next one down.
Oh, the next one down?
That-
It doesn't matter.
That identifies that a portion of the zone was removed so that it's in the same.
I have no strong opinion.
I think it's a perfect place in the beginning to add it because it's the first time that it's mentioned.
Yeah.
So I'm supportive of it in the second line. Because now I think we're splitting hairs.
Okay, so I would attempt to make a motion. I move to approve resolution number 25-19 with amendment that at the in the second sentence, it's read, the Tigard Enterprise Zone Program, the Tigard Enterprise Zone, parenthesis, previously Tigard-Lake Oswego Enterprise Zone, parenthesis, program offers incentive for new and expanding businesses to make capital investment and create new quality jobs in the area.
Is there a second?
That motion was the amendment and the approval of the
Yeah.
overall. Oh, seconded.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. We had robust discussion on the title. Are there any questions? I know we had this a couple of weeks ago, but are there any additional questions on the enterprise zone? Okay. Will the city recorder read the name and number of the resolution?
Resolution number 25-19. Let's see. And I don't have it, oh, just a moment, it's right here. A resolution reaffirming the city of, oh, wait a minute, let me start again. I'm not sure if I have the entire.
It's
Resolution redesignating the Tigard Enterprise Zone as amended.
Excellent, thank you. Will the city recorder conduct a roll call vote?
Counselor Schlack,
Yes.
Counselor Shaw,
Yes.
Counselor President Wolf,
Yes.
Counselor Gaducy,
Yes.
Counselor Hu,
Yes.
Mayor Lube,
Yes.
Counselor Robbins.
Yes.
Thank you, everyone. The resolution is passed by unanimous vote of the council. We don't have any executive session scheduled tonight. That completes our agenda, so we are adjourned. Thank you so much. Good night, everyone.